computer. I just started the recording and I'm going to introduce Justin Waters. He has all waters guide service over on the Hood Canal, and we're really tickled that that you're able to present here, Justin. It's been 3 or 4 years now. I think you were here last time, and like I mentioned earlier, you're the largest crowd that we've ever had that I know of at a meeting, and that was pretty cool.
You must have had some pretty boring people since then. No, but thank you guys so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. It's been a couple months since I've done one of these, so I'm happy to be sharing the room with you guys. Looking forward to being able to do it live again. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. One moment while I figure that out. All right, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. If you and guys, I'm a much better bullshitter than I am a presenter. So if you guys want to interrupt me at any point during this, I would gladly take that interruption. Otherwise, you'll see at the end of the event why I drink a lot of coffee, and I tend to speak pretty quickly. So.
And I might mute people if somebody's unmuted and I hear noise in the background. I might mute people. So check your settings and mute yourself when you're not speaking. Thank you.
Yeah, and while I'm presenting, I can't see the group, so
that's all right. I'll try and monitor it. Thanks.
Perfect. All right, so I'm Justin Waters. I own All Waters Fly Fishing as well as All Waters Coffee Company, and we guide primarily on Hood Canal, but we also do, we do all of Bainbridge Island, pretty much all the west side of Puget Sound from Point Wilson all the way down to the South Sound. And for some reason, it is not allowing me to switch. There we go. I'm going to show like a quick 30-second video. If the music is loud, please feel free to turn it down because I don't know how to do that. So this is kind of my crew and I on a day of filming out on Hood Canal, kind of get an idea of what we do out there.
What a wonderful world. What a wonderful world. What a wonderful world.
So the kind of how we'll go through the presentation is through the seasons, and we guide year round. Obviously spring, summer, and fall are quite a bit busier than right now in the wintertime, but in the springtime, a big focus of what we're doing is fishing shallow water, kind of where the fish are either nosing up to the creeks to go up and spawn or nosing up to the creeks to eat the chum fry that are coming out. The one thing we're a little bit careful of in the springtime is because of how we're fishing, if we start catching spawned out fish, we will immediately kind of up and leave. But we'll kind of go through the flies and all of that here in just a second. In the summertime, we do, we're focusing on trying to find cold water. Typically that happens places that are steep, like on the steepest of beaches, where that current pulls right up on the beach and pushes cold water up on the beach. And then in the fall, I mean, the fall is by far my favorite time to be on the Hood Canal or anywhere in Puget Sound. We have tons of bait. You can fish big fish down deep or you can fish top water. There's a lot of options, as well as salmon. And in the wintertime, it's kind of just trying to find where the fish are being lazy and putting a fly in front of them. It's actually a really enjoyable time of year to be fishing, just because we're fishing shallow water and it's very visual. Like, you could kind of sight fish the whole time. And that's probably my favorite way to fish. If it was a bit warmer, it would be fantastic. So I think most of you guys are familiar with sea run cutthroat. I do this presentation in 2 days to the New York City Fly Fishing Club, and so there's a little bit of it not being catered to locals here. But sea run cutthroat are like the little cousin of steelhead. They they spawn in the rivers, hatch, move out to the salt water, and hang around in the intertidal zones for the majority of the year. We did a pretty cool study on Hood Canal this past year that we're still waiting on all the results from, but kind of trying to find out how far they're willing to migrate. I have some theories on that, but not totally sure. But typically they live, within a few miles of their native stream, and they're really exciting fish to fish for on a fly, or light tackle or whatever. But one of the coolest things about sea run cutthroat to me is, the majority of them, about 90% of them that you hook, will jump out of the water, which I just think, I always said if a redfish jumped, it would be the perfect fish. But any fish that jumps is exciting. They tend to fight quite a bit harder than their, cutthroat in a lake would. And I just love being on the salt water with the daily changes in current and there's something different every single day. You could fish the same area 10 days in a row and not hit the exact same circumstances, which I just absolutely love about saltwater fishing. So in the springtime, one of the things that I think makes spring extremely exciting is it kind of sets up your whole, obviously with calendar, but it kind of sets up your whole year for sea run cutthroat fishing. If you have a good chum fry run, the cutthroat will follow the chum, will follow those little baby chum fry up the shorelines, typically north of where their creeks are, because chum don't go away from the ocean, they go towards the ocean. So they'll typically follow those chum fry north of the creek. And once those schools start to dissipate, that tends to be where the sea run cutthroat hang for the rest of the year. So if you're on the fish every day, like we are, you can kind of see, like, okay, this is where these fish from this creek are going to stop. So you don't have to drift miles of empty water afterwards. They tend to follow those chum fry out of the creek mouth. And once those schools dissipate, that's where those fish will feed for the rest of the season. So I think that's really interesting and really cool. The other really cool thing about the springtime and those chum fry is the cutthroat are fishing or hunting in really shallow water, or not so much shallow water, but they're hunting in the top of the water column. So we'll fish either floating flies or intermediate, like lightly weighted flies, and we'll fish them right on the top of the water. This fly that you see in the picture here is called a frisky fly. It's essentially a chum baby with a foam head. I'd tie it a little bit different than Bob Triggs did. But it's essentially a chum baby with a foam head in a size, I don't know, anywhere from a size 6 later in the spring to a size 10 in the early spring. And with that foam head, it will stay right underneath the surface because it's kind of a heavy hook. It will stay right underneath the surface, and you can see every time it gets eaten, whether it's a whether it's eaten like an emerger, like a mayfly, or it's eaten like, a big streamer on a pull, like a, big trout. The fish absolutely hammer them on the surface, and it's really exciting. One of the biggest mistakes I see in the spring is people just pound the water. One second, I just want to jump to so people just pound the water. If you go out there in the springtime and you see chum fry and you make 70,000 casts into that water, you're going to scare every single fish in there. So I tell people, make 2 or 3 casts and wait a couple minutes and watch that chum fry. If you start seeing them boil again, like there's something underneath them, make 2 or 3 casts and wait a little bit. I think one of the things that people forget when you're fishing for cutthroat is these are saltwater fish, and they're very, very observant of what's going on around them. And the reason for that is everything around them wants to eat them. If it's bigger than them, it will put them in their mouth. I've seen chum salmon bite cutthroat as you're fighting them when you're fishing around the chum salmon. I've seen seals pull fish off our lines. I've seen otters chewing on cutthroat, ospreys, eagles, anything that can eat a cutthroat will eat a cutthroat. So they're very observant of what's going around them. And if you're just pounding and pounding and pounding the water, they're gonna get taken, or they're gonna get spooked and run around and run away. So when we're fishing these chum fry, I tend to use a longer leader than most anglers. Traditionally with cutthroat fishing, I mean, you could get away with a 3-foot leader if you really wanted to, but I think we have more success fishing those 9 and 10 foot, particularly in the spring when we're fishing these little tiny flies. A 9 or 10 foot leader on a floating or intermediate line is just going to give you a better presentation and let you not smack the water every time you cast. Obviously, if it's windy, you could shorten it up and stiffen it up a little bit. But if it's a calm day out there and you see chum fry boiling on the surface, I would tend to get a little more stealthy, almost like Spring Creek fishing. And again, I can't see you guys, so if you guys are asking questions, I have no idea.
Well, like you said, Justin, we'll let people unmute themselves and jump in if they have a question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another thing I like to mention to folks when we're fishing these, or when you're fishing in the springtime, is just because you don't see chum fry doesn't mean that there's no cutthroat there. If you don't see chum fry, I tend to fish like sculpin patterns in the spring. It's really the only time of year I fish sculpins, and it's because the sculpin are really aggressive and they will eat the cutthroat, or not eat the cutthroat, sorry. They will eat the chum fry. Those would be big sculpin, lingcod. The sculpin will eat those chum fry, and a lot of times if you see fish boiling, and in our boat, because we sit up higher than if you are on the beach, a lot of times you'll see the chum fry like flailing out of the water, and you'll be looking in there, and I'm like, man, I can usually spot a cutthroat. I've just been staring at the water for the past 12 years trying to find them. I can usually spot them. The chum fry, I will see the chum boiling on the surface and be looking through, and I'm shocked at how often it's actually like a little sculpin will spook, basketball size court full of chum fry out of the water, and it's just 1 or 2 sculpin trying to hit them. So that's a good pattern during the cutthroat, or during the springtime. We kind of call it a cheeseburger in paradise. If we can't catch them on chum fry, we'll switch over to sculpin. So in the summertime, in the summertime, one thing that cutthroat anglers, you'll hear a lot if you're cruising the forums or hanging out at the fly shop, is people will say cutthroat will eat anything, and that's very true. They're very opportunistic feeders. There's a lot of bait in the water, so they're not super picky. However, I will say they will eat everything. They will eat the right thing way more often. If in the summertime, when in doubt, one of the best things you can do is fish a sand lance pattern. And that's pretty much true year round. The sand lance are by far the most abundant bait source for them. And it's also extremely oily, extremely nutritious. And truthfully, they travel in schools and they're kind of stupid. So the cutthroat can eat them pretty quickly. You know, we scoop them up in aquarium nets sometimes just to show our customers, and especially if there's kids on the boat, we'll scoop them up in aquarium nets and show people. They're pretty easy to catch. I imagine a cutthroat makes pretty easy access to them. But the big thing in the summertime is trying to find those sand lance and trying to find cold water. Cutthroat are trout, so anything above that 65-degree water temperature is pretty bad for them. I try my very best, and you know, it's a business, we have to make money and all that kind of stuff. But I don't really find that to be an excuse. I have two of the best guides in the state working for me, and Captain Carson Moran and Captain Mike Hanford. Those two guys are top notch. And I tell them every year, if I catch you guys fishing in hot water for cutthroat, you don't have a job anymore. I think it's a really bad example. And I think kind of part of being a fishing guide is leading by example. And I don't want our customers thinking it's okay to fish in warm water for cutthroat. That you're going to kill them. They don't do well. They will eat. And unfortunately, we have fished, and especially back when we were beach fishing, not realizing how warm the water is. And, you know, we've caught them and seen them die, and it's a shame. And it's kind of, as a professional, it's not tolerated at all. But the big thing is trying to find that water that's cooler than 65 degrees. In Puget Sound, that's easy. In Hood Canal in the summertime, you have to fish north, and you have to be willing to put the miles in on the boat, or in the truck or whatever. That cold water, you're going to find way more fish willing to eat a fly, and it's just way more fun trying to find them in cold. The summertime on Hood Canal at Quilcene Bay last year, it was the warmest I've ever seen it. It was 89 degrees in Quilcene Bay last summer. We had a huge algae bloom. When those algae blooms happen, they heat the water up faster because the sun bounces off of them and heats up faster. And the whole Hood Canal warmed up. We actually canceled almost a month worth of trips of people wanting to fish from Alderbrook and things like that at the bottom of the canal. We just said, hey, I'm sorry, we can't do them. We just didn't want to take the chance of killing everything. But once you find that cold water, the big thing in the summertime is deep water that pushes right up on the bank. This photo up here was taken a couple years back. And we're really, really close to the beach right there. We're probably fishing 25 feet of water. And those cold currents will do upwellings right up on the beach. And, you know, 10 feet below the water, even when it's 89 degrees at the surface, once you go down 10 feet, you're talking 60 degrees. It gets cold quick. So it's not too difficult to find cold water if you really know where to go. And then staying in that cold moving water. If you get out of the moving water, it's going to warm up, and the fish are going to be sitting in that moving water watching you flail and not catching. This bottom picture here, this is Captain Carson Moran when he was 16 years old when he started fishing with us. He started fishing when he was 12, back when I was guiding in Montana. And then he's been fishing with me ever since. And when he turned 19, he got a captain's license and asked me for a job, and he's been working for us ever since. So in the fall time, I don't know if you guys have, I'm pretty sure you guys have had my wife speak at your club. Whoa, don't know what happened there. Pretty sure you've had my wife speak at your club. She's the head fly designer for Rio, Britta Fordyce. This is one of her patterns, and this is another one. In the fall time, our big keys to success for cutthroat is to, if in the fall time, if you're not fishing for big cutthroat, you're making a mistake. It's so fun trying to target the biggest fish, and in the fall is the best time to do it. And the biggest trick is cutthroat follow the salmon. So if you're in an area, that has salmon and you fish on either side of those schools, you're gonna find cutthroat.
Oh, okay. 'Cause we're from Bainbridge,
Um,
we heard you say something about Bainbridge. We were sitting behind you.
Someone trying to talk to me, or was that a mistake? Hello?
I'm gonna find the people who are not muted, so just.
Oh,
bear
sorry.
with-
I thought they might have been asking me a question. Sorry about that.
No, somebody,
Um,
a bunch of, so anybody who's not muted, please mute yourself. Thank you.
So the cutthroat are going to be behind those schools of salmon. They follow them. They're trying to follow them. They know what they're there for. They're trying to spawn. They're going to try to eat their eggs. So if you could find salmon and fish behind them, you're going to find big cutthroat, or you're going to catch salmon, which is also a great time. The big keys to finding salmon in the fall time is to find the detours in their routes to their spawning creeks. So we know the Quilcene gets coho. The Quilcene tends to be the first river to get coho. So I look at the Quilcene and then look at every point of land from the ocean to the Quilcene River that they have to go around. And that's where I fish for cutthroat. I'm not going to name them just because you guys can look at a map. But anywhere the coho have to go around to find the Quilcene River, there's probably going to be salmon hanging out there in the fall. So having that game plan, looking at a map ahead of time, finding those detours, and then fishing bright and flashy flies. Cutthroat and coho want to see what they're eating. And fishing those big, bright, flashy flies is the best way to do that. Chartreuse, it's no secret, chartreuse and pink work really well. I fish a lot of natural patterns, but I just load them with flash. If you looked at my fly box, it looks like a disco ball. I prefer to fish natural patterns. I just think it's way cooler to trick flies on, or trick fish into eating actual bait rather than pink and chartreuse. But both work really well. I tend to lean towards natural, but that's just kind of my preference. And then be observant. I mean, coho and cutthroat both show themselves really well. They tend to splash on the surface. They tend to slurp things off the surface, slash at bait right below the surface and make disturbances. Being observant, I think, is the number one thing that most anglers struggle with. And it's kind of a funny thing is we tell kids to pay attention all the time, and we go out and go fishing and don't pay any attention at all. But I tend to think that's one of the biggest things that anglers struggle with on the waters. Do they just don't stop and look at what they're doing? So again, it's the best time of year to be fishing for big cutthroat. That fish in the net right there, I'm not gonna say how big it was, but I will say it crushes the state record for sea run cutthroat. And by crushes it, I mean like probably by like 3 or 4 inches.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a big one. And then that's my wife up above releasing a pretty nice cutthroat from right down the road from her house. The other thing that happens in the fall that is really, really unique to sea run cutthroat fishing. Oh, sorry. That's really unique to sea run cutthroat fishing is the fish tend to start looking towards the surface. And We have flying ants or termites. There's still a debate on that, on whether they're one or the other. But the flying ants, I think they're carpenter ants, I'm pretty sure. But those flying ants land on the salt anytime there's wind. If you can get downwind of a big wooded bank, you can find them on the water. And the cutthroat are really looking up. And that's kind of what we were doing in this picture up top, that we were fishing those flying ants. But if you look at this photo down below, you see how shallow that water is. That was probably in 2.5, 3 feet of water that we caught that big guy in. He was not chasing flying ants. He was chasing a school of coho up the creek, and we caught him right in the estuary. But yeah, these fish are not scared to slurp off the surface, and they're not scared to get into shallow water this time of year. With all the salmon around, it gives them a lot of assurance that they're not the best, they're not the tastiest thing on the menu. And then the wintertime. The wintertime is when we go back to fishing sculpins. We go back to fishing a lot of worms. This bottom pattern here is kind of my take on a polychaete worm. Particularly after a full moon, we fish those worms a lot. That's when they tend to hatch, and we tend to see those big gross things on the water. If you guys haven't seen I don't have a picture of one, sorry. If you guys haven't seen a polychaete worm, I highly recommend looking it up. It's the most disgusting creature on planet Earth, and I'm pretty sure it's proof of aliens. It's sorry, what was that?
What was it called again?
It's called a polychaete. It's a poly, Polychete. I'm pretty sure it's pronounced polychaete, but they look like a centipede and an earthworm mated with an alien. They're the most disgusting creature ever, and they ball up in these big balls of worms on the surface during full moons. And when they have babies, they break apart and thousands of little babies come out of them. But they're absolutely disgusting, and the cutthroat love them. They tear them apart on the surface, and they'll eat them like piece by piece after they tear them apart. And it's absolutely amazing if you can get into a school of them. It's kind of rare that you do tend to get in a school of them, but I fish these patterns pretty common in the fall and in the wintertime, these polychaete patterns. And it's just tan, pink, and I tend to do like a grizzly, like a fuzzy grizzly schlappen collar on them. That's actually a pretty rare bird that's on that one. But yeah, they're really fun to fish, and they're right on the top, so you could strip them fast. They're really fast moving worms on the water. They're not slow. Like, they look like they would be slow moving, but they're really fast, and they're disgusting. I don't know if I could stress that enough, how gross they are. But every now and then at low tide after a full moon, you'll see them on the boat ramps. But this is another time of year I fish. We're fishing floating lines in the oysters, really visual. This point right here on the bottom picture here is called Big Fish Rock. That's obviously not on a map. We named it that. It was there's a huge rock you could see in the bottom right corner. There's a giant rock there, and at high tide, I almost hit it. And I put it in my GPS as BFR. And the next time we were there, some little kid asked me what BFR meant, and it changed to Big Fish Rock. It's been that ever since. But yeah, that's snow on the trees right there. And this beach is kind of a perfect example of everything you want in a cutthroat beach. Towards the right of the screen there's big eelgrass beds that lead up to a rocky point. And then at the end of the point, it drops off to about 150 feet. And it's just the perfect curve in the water there. And I think Tony on this call knows exactly where this is. I've seen him there before. But if you know that spot, you know there's a lot of fish there. in the lower Hood Canal. So again, we're starting to extend our leaders because the water is really, really clear in the wintertime. And so we go back to those 9-foot leaders, 3, 4X tippet. And the other cool thing about the wintertime is you could switch to a floating line, where most of the year we're fishing sinking, like type 3 or intermediate sinking lines. In the peak of the summer, we'll even go type 6, like real fast sinking lines. And so in the summer, it's an opportunity to cast with ease, in the wintertime, it's an opportunity to cast with ease, fish shallow, fish really visual. It's all about seeing the fish eat your fly this time of year. And then obviously it's also about bundling up, like Lemmy, our boat dog here. That dog's been on the water more than 90% of the fishing guides in Hood Canal and Puget Sound. But yeah, he keeps us warm in the winter. And then something I try to say every time I do this talk is, when you're on the water out anywhere in the world, but I really think Hood Canal is a special place. And for those of you guys who haven't really spent a lot of time out there, Hood Canal to the rest of the state sounds like it's really, really far away. I get customers all the time from Seattle and north of Seattle who are like, "Oh, I thought this was going to be like 4 or 5 hours away." And I'm like, and it's an hour and a half outside of, to the farthest place I meet clients, it's an hour and a half outside of Seattle. But it has this illusion of being really far away. And I love that because it keeps those people out of Hood Canal. But sorry. But it's a really special place. It's got the mountains coming right out of the salt water. It's got beautiful green forest right there. It's really sparsely populated, and it's just a really, really special place. And during COVID, we saw it get hit pretty hard. Like, I actually stopped advertising altogether because of it. You haven't gotten emails from me if you're on my email list, really. You haven't seen me posting online very much, on social media or anything like that. And it's because we started seeing people out there. And obviously I give these talks all the time and tell people how amazing it is. And then I get surprised when there's people out there. I'm kind of a hypocrite, but if you're going to be on the water, I think it's our responsibility as anglers to take care of the water. It's by law, you have to pinch your barb. By law, you're not supposed to bring fish over the gunnel that you're not keeping in Washington. So keeping fish over the water, or better yet, in the water, is really big. I got in a pretty public debate with somebody, I guess it was a couple of years ago now, that I didn't realize was quite as public as it was, but I should have. And I called the guy a copepod. Copepod's a parasite that lives on most salmonoids in the saltwater. And he kind of fancied himself as like a old guard of Puget Sound and Northwest fishing, and every picture he had was holding fish by the gills or dragging them up on the beach. And I was like, hey man, like you can't be an advocate for these fish and show people that that's how you do it. I really think it's all of our responsibilities as anglers to take care of the fish. And maybe I'm a little bit on my soapbox here, but also not just take care of fish, but show people how to take care of fish and be an advocate for them, particularly professionally as a guide. And I've been doing this for my whole life since I was 16 years old. I'm 34 now, so it's I've been a professional angler since I was 16, and I find it indefensible when folks call themselves a professional and don't and they aren't an advocate as well. Another cool thing that like most beach anglers do, and I think this is really, really a cool thing. Most beach anglers carry a stripping basket with them. They strip their line in it so they're not stepping on the rocks and oysters and cutting their fly lines, and makes it easier to cast and all that. I tell people, like, on your way out, pick up the beer can that's sitting on the beach, or candy wrapper or whatever, and throw it in your basket and bring it home with you and throw it away. The little things like that add up, and especially in a place like Hood Canal where there's hardly any garbage. Like that's one thing that like everybody's blown away by is we fish all day. We host a beach cleanup twice a year. My guides and I and a couple of my buddies come out and fish with us for the day, and we pick up garbage. We run from the Hood Canal Bridge, Salisbury Point, down one side of the canal, pick up any garbage, fish a couple spots, have lunch at Alderbrook, and then run back up the canal the other way on the west side and pick up any garbage, fish a couple spots, and take out. It's a really long day, but we do it every year. And I mean, there's been more than one year where we couldn't even get more than 2 garbage bags full of trash. I mean, that's insane. That's anywhere else in America that you fish with that many miles, you're going to pick up a lot of garbage. Hood Canal is very special in that. I'll get off my soapbox now. Sorry. But I do think that's a really cool, I think it's a cool thing to share with people is, you know, it's fun to fish and it's fun to be in beautiful places. And if we don't take care of it, I think it's going to be gone. And during COVID, that was probably the thing that struck me more so than like even the news cycle during COVID was how many people were on the water. And I think that's awesome. But I just want to make sure people know that it's not going to be there if we don't take care of it. So the Big Fjord project. I don't know if you guys have had Coastal Cutthroat Coalition speak with you guys since COVID started, but this started in 2020, right? Kind of right at the peak of COVID, and we did the whole project, or we did most of the project. The part where we took part in it was 2021. We had biologists on our boat, and we went through, and every fish that the anglers caught, you know, if we had a single angler, we'd invite a biologist on the boat, and every fish that they caught, we would take a DNA sample. We would take scale samples. We'd do a copepod count, parasite count, and then measure them and send them back into the water. And before we did that, they did all the same things in the rivers, minus the parasite count because they don't have parasites when they hit the river. But they weighed the fish, they took samples, they took DNA samples and all that, and they found that every river system in Hood Canal had a unique DNA pattern to them. So if you caught one in the Quilcene, it would be different than if you caught one in Thorndike or if you caught one in Union or anything like that. So they took samples in every river in Hood Canal, every drainage that went into the Hood Canal. And then we went out and caught cutthroat all over Hood Canal. We purposely fished different places to get samples from different parts of the canal. And we should find out pretty shortly on how far these cutthroat are willing to travel. And if they cross the thing I find the most fascinating from the study is we're actually going to be able to find out if cutthroat crossed the river or crossed the canal. And I think that will be that'll be a really unique opportunity.
What do you mean cross the canal?
Like if
Go
they
from one side to the other?
Yeah. If they cross over that, you know, most of the canal is quite a few hundred feet deep. So if they spawn in Lillywop Creek, if we could catch them on the east side of the canal, that would mean they had to cross all that water to get there. And I think it's a really unique opportunity to find out if that's possible. You know, we've always said that they stay in shallow water, so it'll be cool to see if they do it. I thought that would be the most interesting, most eye-opening thing that we could learn, as well as how far they're willing to go away from their natal stream. But it was actually a huge accomplishment to do this project. I will be very clear. I want to give all the credit where credit's due to James Losi and the people at Coastal Cutthroat Coalition, because they put this whole thing together. But it was one of the biggest WDFW collaborations they've ever done. having a private business, a state enhancement group, and a nonprofit group, and WDFW all involved in it. Was the first time it's ever happened. So it was a really cool project and a kind of an honor to be a part of. In the Coastal Cutthroat Coalition. I don't know if you guys are, I don't know how involved with them you guys are, but they're an amazing group. They do a lot of good in the world.
Yeah, that we've had them present at our club. I can't remember when, but we've had them present. And
Yeah.
I've sent out a couple from the club to invite folks to participate with some of their studies with catching fish. And
Oh, cool. Yeah. They're a great group. Greg and James and all them are very, we're very lucky. We're very fortunate to have those people willing to give up that much of their time. I mean, those guys aren't getting paid to put in countless hours in the name of trout, which is like a very unique thing for them to be willing to do. Yeah. And for some reason, it's not letting me go to the next slide. There we go. So now here's my shameless plug for All Waters Coffee Company. So a handful of years ago, I took out somebody that started a coffee business called Black Rifle Coffee. And this was many years ago. This was probably, this was like when I first started guiding out in the saltwater out here, named Evan Schaefer. He's a Green Beret. He started this coffee company with the goal of raising money for like ex-military and veterans groups. And we were talking, and it bothered me for years. I was like, I can't believe no one's done this for fishing. And then I was like, I'm going to do this one day, but I barely know how to run a business. So I just didn't think it was possible. And one day I was telling this guy, some guy asked me like, hey, if you didn't do this, what would you do? And I said, I would probably start a coffee company. And we just kind of chatted about an idea of how I would do it. And he was like, well, let's do it. And a year later, and this was like, after 4 years of dreaming about 4 or 5 years of dreaming about it after this coffee thing, a year later, after I took this guy fishing, we had fished a handful of times since then and talked about it a little more. And he called me, and it took about 6 months, and we launched All Waters Coffee Company together, the two of us. And that day happened to be the day that they shut the entire country down for COVID. Because we have awesome timing. And we talked about it kind of leading up. I was like, there's no way that, this silly thing's going to go away in a couple days. I think we're just getting scared. And then we launched the same day that they shut the entire country down because our timing was impeccable. So we kind of played around with it for a year, kind of learned what the business was going to be, and kind of took that time to kind of, I don't want to say perfect, because we definitely didn't perfect anything, but we took that time to kind of learn who we were as a business and do all that. But and kind of found our who we wanted to be and all that kind of stuff during that time. But in the last year or so, we've really made some moves with it. And now you could buy it in a handful of fly shops around the country, and we're working on getting in a couple grocery stores and all that stuff. But the idea behind it is 3% of the proceeds are going to go to whatever. Every roast has a different nonprofit associated with it, and 3% of those proceeds will go to those nonprofits. Yeah, it's been a really fun little project we're working on.
well, it's a soft opening.
Yeah, it was an incredibly soft opening where we opened and we were like, oh, our grand opening, we have one customer, my mom. But no, it actually worked out really well as it could for doing that. Thankfully, both of us thankfully I had a business partner with it. Otherwise it probably would not been as awesome. But yeah, we had a lot of fun with it. And we're having a lot of fun with it. So every roast, like I said, kind of goes to a different nonprofit. Our dark roast goes to Save Bristol Bay. I don't know if you guys are, I'm sure you haven't, I'm sure you've all heard of the No Pebble Mine and Save Bristol Bay. They're right now working on ESA protection for the Bristol Bay region of Alaska. And they're working for congressional protection to prevent anything like the Pebble Mine from ever happening again. And I think as of right now, that's looking very positive for the Bristol Bay region and the fish up there. The largest salmon runs in the world were in pretty grave danger for a while there. I spent a couple seasons guiding up there, and it just blows me away that something like that could ever happen. And then our medium roast goes to Wild Steelheaders United, which is a Trout Unlimited organization that is working kind of across the board with anglers of any kind to protect wild steelhead. And the way that they're doing it is, in my opinion, a much less abrasive way than a lot of the other organizations are, and a much more effective strategy than saying, oh, if you fish for steelhead but you're not fly fishing, you're doing it wrong. I think that's kind of a poor way of gathering people to organize against, dams on the Snake River or anything else. Our medium light roast is the Captain's Blend, going for Captains for Clean Water. If you guys have been following conservation news at all in the last couple weeks, Florida just had State Bill 2508, which I cannot believe I remember that number, which was channeling water away from the Everglades towards a sugar farm. And the Captains for Clean Water for the last 6 years has fought really hard to get clean, fresh water going into the Everglades and keeping Florida Bay and all of the Everglades region clean and free of algae blooms and free of eelgrass die-off. And we were actually down there. This is my home state. Florida is where I came from. And we were actually down there and unfortunately got to see, miles and miles and miles of fish kill and dead manatees and dead dolphins and everything from when they did this originally, where they were funneling water away from the Everglades towards the sugar mill farms. And because of Captains for Clean Water, it got reversed and back to the Everglades. And State Bill 2508 was absolutely going to be passed. And the Captains for Clean Water organized all the fishing guides in South Florida. Thousands of people went from the Keys up to Tallahassee and protested. And the governor made a statement saying, these people really care about the water and we are going to turn this down and veto the bill. So, I mean, they're doing amazing work down there, and that's what that coffee is, that the proceeds from that coffee are going to. 3% of the proceeds. I don't want to sound like I'm that charitable. I can't do that for free. But and then our light roast is the Mayfly Project. I actually think the Mayfly Project was the one I was most excited to tell you guys about. The fly fishing clubs in general, if you guys have not heard of the Mayfly Project, I beg you to look them up. It's the only organization I've ever been involved with where hearing about it made me cry. Like they're the most amazing two people I've ever met that started this group. They do mentorships for foster children, and it hit home for me pretty personally. I was not a foster child, but the way I grew up, it was a very personal thing with me. But the Mayfly Project provides mentorships for foster children, and through week-long fly fishing camps that are hosted by folks like yourself. different fly fishing clubs, just groups of friends that get together and say, hey, we're going to take a week and take 6 foster kids fishing for a week and teach them about conservation and teach them about fly tying. And at the end of the week, they end up with a pair of waders that's partially donated by Reddington, a fly rod donated by whatever, Reddington, Echo, whatever. Sage sometimes does it. They end up with a fly box and flies, and it's a really, really special event. And I really think that clubs like yourself should at least look into it, because it's a really cool program. And I think everybody that has been involved, everybody I've ever met that's hosted something like this has absolutely loved it and came out with the same impression of the people that run Mayfly Project. It's 2 people, Jesse, and if you guys are interested, and I can definitely put you in touch. And again, that's a plug for my coffee, but I really hope that the idea behind that was you guys to hear about these organizations. They're very cool. And if you have any questions about them, my other life outside of guiding is I run outreach for some of these organizations. So it's pretty cool program.
Where is it sold locally around here?
All Waters Coffee Company, you could buy it on our website. You can buy it at Avid Angler in Lake Forest Park. You could buy it at the Portland Fly Shop. You could buy it at Waters West. Those are the closest 3 shops.
Thanks.
Yeah, the Portland Fly Shop, Waters West, and Avid Angler are our 3 northwest, closest to here.
You got Avid Angler and Waters West. What's the third one?
Sorry, Avid Angler in Lake Forest Park over in North Seattle. Waters West up in Port Angeles, and the Portland Fly Shop down in Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
Then we're in a few shops in Colorado, a few more shops in Oregon, and a shop in Arkansas, Texas, and Florida, and Maine. Yeah.
Have you touched base with the one up in Bellingham? Or
Yeah, Confluence. Yeah, I actually have a meeting with them in a couple weeks.
oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah, Scott's amazing. I've done a lot with them over the years.
They're great up there.
What was that?
But they always, every time I've been there, they've been great up there. Every time I've been up there, so.
Oh, the nicest people in the world. I
Yep,
went to college
exactly.
up there. And
Yeah.
I went to
they were
college
good.
So did I.
Yeah, my dream was to open a fly shop up there one day, and that dream changed quite a bit. And then when they opened it, I was very happy for them.
They beat you to it.
No, they didn't beat me to it. The owning a fly shop sounds a lot harder than I used to think it would be. Oh shoot, sorry. Yeah, so hopefully, oh Jesus, I'm falling apart here, guys. Sorry, 1 second. So what's coming next for our company here is for All Waters Fly Fishing. Hopefully we're going to continue to do some work with the Big Fjord project this year. I'm not sure what the next steps on that are. I haven't really talked to them this year yet. Our tarpon camp for 2022 is non-existent. We are going to just go fishing and have fun and not host a bunch of people. So I'm kind of excited for that this year. I love hosting and all that, but I haven't gone down there and just brought my wife and had a good time in quite a few years without working. So we're going to go down and do some tarpon fishing this year, and next year we'll go back and do another tarpon camp. It's something I look forward to every year. We go to Homosassa and do that. Hopefully, fingers crossed, with this whole COVID thing seemingly lightening up a little bit, we will resume casting classes at Alderbrook Resort. We hosted weekly free casting classes at Alderbrook every Wednesday for 6 years, and we had an awesome time doing it. You could have cocktails and cast fly rods and shoot the breeze and talk about fishing. We would get done guiding, pull our boats up and all that. And then when COVID does lift, we will be hosting a COVID wrap-up party. I'm not sure where. Ideally, probably at a brewery somewhere, and probably in the Kitsap County area. But we do want to have a COVID wrap-up party somewhere, and cast fly rods, do some raffles. We know we're sponsored by Grunin's. We're sponsored by Sage Fly Rods. And, hopefully we could put together some cool packages and raise some money and have some fun. And once that happens, I will reach out to Eric and let him know that you guys are all invited.
Thanks.
So
Being recorded.
what was that?
What was that,
So-
Ed? Did you say something, Ed?
No.
Oh, okay. It looked like you said something. Okay.
Oh, sorry. I heard a sound. I thought someone said
So
something.
it said something about recording or something
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
I did hear. Okay, that is what I thought I heard.
That's what I heard too.
Anyway, we just had a cancellation about 10 minutes before I checked in with Eric this afternoon, and Captain Mike lost the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. His guy apparently can't come out this year, last minute. So those dates, we do have 3 days, $100 off, guiding out in Hood Canal or Puget Sound, either one. And like I said, Mike is one of the best guides on earth. He's the nicest guy in the world. He's my best friend. And yeah, he's a pleasure to be with. His boat's super, super stable, this Boston Whaler here. I was super bummed to hear that he lost his pay for 3 days there. But yeah, we're offering that at $100 off a day. If anybody wants to take him up on it. I am 100% booked up every open day until April. Captain Mike and Carson both have some days off between now and then. And if you guys are looking to get out and do some fishing and have some fun, shoot me an email, or give me a call, or however you want to get a hold of me.
Well, I'm interested in the 5th.
Awesome. Yeah, let me
Shoot you an email.
yeah, perfect. That would be great. I know he'd be super excited to hear that. Yeah, if anybody has any questions about anything, I know I talk fast and I know that presentation was a bit long, but feel free to ask.
Was that Greta on the back of that boat?
No, I actually cannot remember who that was. That was actually, she came with the film crew that we hosted. I work with a film crew out of Seattle, Spalding Media, and she was one of their friends that she's just a really good angler and wanted to tag along, and yeah, we brought her along. And then the guy in the front of the boat owns the Port Orchard CrossFit gym. And then that's Captain Mike in the middle there.
Justin, I have a question.
Yes.
Just like Steelhead, I'm a conflicted coastal cutty angler. This is a conservation sort of question. I know they're endangered, and the Cutthroat Coalition has been doing an amazing job, and I understand the populations have been rebounding over the last few years. Do you have any sense of how healthy those populations are now? And while I try to practice, responsible catch and release techniques and be a good steward of all the ecosystem, I'm just wondering, is there any negative impact to targeting coastal cutties even when you catch and release, or what's your perspective on all that you can sort of advise to fly fishers like us?
Yeah, of course. So Searing Cutthroat are not endangered. They are considered a healthy
Threatened.
population.
They are considered threatened?
No, they are. The reason that they are catch and release, and thankfully for this, is it's actually kind of cool how they became catch and release. the state knows nothing about them. That is kind of the whole idea behind the Coastal Cutthroat Coalition, is to research and find out information about them. We have no idea how many of them there are. We have no idea, where they go. From a scientific perspective, from an angling perspective, we have a lot of theories on all that. But and because they're an anadromous species, naturally their populations do fluctuate. So like I find, and this is my 12th season chasing them, and I find that their population tends to boom, and this is just in 12 years. This is maybe not science, although I have talked to James Losey about this, and he tends to agree. Their populations tend to boom on good years, like good years where we have like pretty wet winters, but not massive flood events. Maybe a couple years after that. And then they tend to boom, and you catch a lot of fish that are 10 inches. And then as they start to decline, you catch a lot of fish that are 12 to 14 inches. And then they boom, and you catch a lot of fish that are 8 to 10 inches, and then decline, and you catch a lot of fish in the mid-teens. But I think, to answer your question about angling, I think there's always a negative impact when you're doing this. We release fish out of a boat, so we have like this really cool bird's eye view on what happens after you release them. And there is a certain percentage of fish. I think it's way low, and it could be because you're on a boat with someone who's walking you through what to do when you hook one. But on a boat, you get to see the fish after you release it, what it does. And I've made some pretty, you start paying attention to what the fish does after you release them. And if it's like a perfect, everything goes right, the hook pops right out as soon as it hits the net, and you release it, they tend to go out and away from the boat. If you hook them and they take the hook weird, like in the tongue or something like that, where they're bleeding, or in the gill where they're bleeding, they swim straight down. Not like sink, but like scream for the bottom of scream for the deep water. And a couple of years ago, I took out a guy and I was talking about it, and the guy was a fish statistician, and he did a study with NOAA on what fish do when you release them. And he said, anytime a fish is bleeding, of any species, just about, not all species, but almost every species, when you release them, if they're bleeding, they dive for deep water. In their theory, and again, this is a theory, not science, but their theory is that they use the water pressure to clot the wound. Fish don't have hands to put pressure on it, so they use the water pressure to do that. And that's just a theory, but I thought it was super interesting, and I thought it applied to what you're saying. But I do think, this is a very long-winded answer, I do think there is negative impact, but I think it's pretty minimal with a single barbless hook, assuming that you're not playing the fish out and you're not dragging them up on the beach. So if you're being responsible and you actually care, I think you're not causing, you're definitely not causing a decline in the population. Even if 1% of them die that you catch, 1 out of every 100 fish. I think that's
Okay.
pretty good odds.
Okay, thank you. And then just a tackle question. Can you get by with a floating line, and then when you need to get down, use sink tips or split shot, or do you really need to have a intermediate or full sinking line in your arsenal to target coastal cutties? And is a 6 or 7 weight rod good enough, or do you recommend an 8 or 9 weight on the Hood Canal?
So I recommend a 5 or 6 weight. You can definitely catch cutthroat on a floating line. There's a lot of guys who only fish cutthroat on the surface, like literally on the surface, like Milwaukee poppers or gurglers. And the last couple of years, oddly, I've had a lot of customers say that's the only way they want to fish. And that's super fun. But I highly recommend, highly, especially if you're fishing out of a boat, I highly recommend having a type 3 sinking line. It is a absolute game changer. The problem with fishing a floating line with a weighted fly is as you strip, every strip your fly gets shallower. It pulls it from the bottom, which certain times of year has an advantage, like in the wintertime. I think actually that's a really good way to fish. But in the summertime, the ability to fish like a bead on the front of your pattern and then a sinking line, you just get a deeper presentation, and it stays in that deeper zone for longer, and that's where the fish are when it's hot out. The fish are in like 5 or 6 feet of water typically. Yeah, I hope that answered your question. You can do it, but I don't think it's the best way.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
I have a question concerning the issue of the fish dying. As an old educated fish scientist who finished his work years ago, it was my understanding when I was at the School of Fisheries that if you hook a fish so that they are bleeding, that they have no clotting capability in their blood, and that they will probably die or bleed to death. But the concept of going to deep water to try and stop that bleeding is a fascinating understanding. That's of interest to me. You bet.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually went to school for fisheries as well. No, that was I found that super fascinating too, and I hope I did not repeat that as the truth. I that was definitely a theory. But I've been observing it ever since I was told that, and every single fish that we've caught that was bleeding has done that ever since. Or it's rolled over and died, and that's not good. I have, obviously if you're catching 10 fish a day, 250 days a year, you're gonna have some death. And it sucks, but it's a fact. But every single fish we've caught that has been bleeding has dove for the deep water after we've caught them. And it actually doesn't happen that often. Like it's pretty rare. It's pretty rare that you hook a cutthroat. If you're using like a size 6 hook that's barbless, it's pretty rare that you hook them in a bad way. And if you do, it tends to be, and unfortunately this is the truth of it, it tends to be guys who are like very new to fishing that are really slow to stripping the fly. Like that can't get their hand to grab the fly line and pull it, because they don't notice that the fish has it. And I'll be standing there and I'll be like, set the hook, set the hook, set the hook. And the fish is just swimming around with their fly for like 10, 15 seconds before they can actually get tight with it and set the hook. And I think that the fish is starting to swallow the hook. I think that's what happens. And that's
I have one other question. The early scenes of your fishing activities, it looked to me like there was some water that you were fishing or you were touring along, you were moving alongside that appeared to be very similar to the water shorelines that I've seen at Dabob Bay. And I was just curious if that's an area you like to fish.
Yeah, I absolutely love fishing Dabob Bay. The Quilcene area, the whole Dabob Bay area, and Quilcene and Tarbu, are some of my favorite areas to explore. It's beautiful. It makes me feel like it makes me feel like I'm fishing somewhere that I've never been, even though I've been there hundreds of times. I think that's I think that's one of the most special places in Washington saltwater.
Years ago, when I was active with the Washington Fly Fishing Club, we actually had an event there in Dabob Bay working with Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, where the club was capturing fish to be used as captive broodstock for sea run cutthroat.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that was a while ago then.
We had a live truck hauling facility there at Dabob, and we did capture some nice fish that were the seed for the original captive broodstock program that the department had for sea run cutthroat.
Yeah, they only had that for a handful of years, but that was an interesting program. I got to read some of what they found from that. And
The
interestingly,
the hatchery part of it was on Big Beef Creek where they,
Yep.
and then the net pen system was at Manchester.
yeah, interestingly, a lot of what they found about it is sea run cutthroat, anytime they've had a hatchery program on it, has been like very, very difficult to keep the fish alive.
Yes.
And it's actually one of so I went to school for fisheries management and aquaculture. And that was always like talked about because I went to school in Washington. So cutthroat were a fish that we studied.
Sure.
And that was always talked about as the hardest fish to keep alive. And I've always thought that was very cool that cutthroat would rather die than be kept in a cage.
Yep.
They're wild. They're wild right to their core.
Yep.
And yeah, they're I'm obviously biased here, but I just think they're one of the coolest fish in the world. They're a little anarchist.
Great program. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Justin, again, amazing. We have 27 people, I think, show up, which is incredible. You did it again. Biggest turnout, second biggest turnout ever, or maybe this one's bigger than the last one. I have to look. But thank you again so much for coming to for doing this on Zoom. I know sometimes that can be a little weird and awkward, and some folks aren't as comfortable with it, but you did it in spades and just really did a great job of giving us a good taste of how to approach cutthroat here in the Hood Canal, and yeah, so I really, really appreciate it. So
Yeah, thank you very much.
yeah,
Thank you, Justin.
Yeah, and
Thank you. That was great.
yeah, I hope that there was a couple times I can't see this. I can't see you guys when I'm presenting. So thank you for rolling with the punches if I got confused.
no, it's totally fine. Yeah, with this kind of media, you have to roll with the technology, and little hiccups and burps happen, and that's life. Yeah.
All right. Well,
So-
thank you guys.
Thank you, Justin.
And anybody who wants to hang around and talk a little bit, you're welcome to. I'm not going to shut the thing. I'm going to turn off the recording now, but you can hang around.